Alright, so this is video number 7 of the boxMan tutorial, and this is also part 3 of the rigging section. So, a couple things have changed since the last part of the rigging. I noticed I had one error in geometry, just a naming conflict. I had right shin and I had left knee. I usually name, well, first of all, on all my characters, they're usually pretty much one piece. You don't have floating objects like this in like high resolution characters. So you normally just have like one piece called mesh. But I call the joints, this joint right here, left knee. But this piece of geometry, you can call it left knee also, or you can call it left shin. I just decided to go with left shin right here on both of them. So I just changed left knee to left shin. I've also named all of these joints. Well, half of the body's joints. You can just see how they're named right there. And I basically what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make the root joint. So I'm just going to, by the way, when you make the root joint, orientation doesn't matter so much, but I would just leave it in none because none is basically the default. So just make a single joint on the open like that and go over into the channel box, which is Control A. You can just cycle through these two things, and I'm going to make the joint radius 1, just so that it's bigger than both of these other two joints, so for selection purposes it can be easier. Then I'm also going to make the upper body joint radius 0.75. So now it's a lot easier to select the all three joints, which happen to be on top of each other. And lastly, I'm going to name that joint and parent the hips lower and the hips upper to the root. So I'm just going to middle mouse drag them onto root. So now if I take the root joint and move it around, the whole skeleton goes with it, which is what we want. Alright, so I'm also going to put the root joint along with all the other joints inside the joints group. I'm going to go ahead and close the geometry group. And just to test that the joints are actually working on the joints layer, I'm going to just toggle the visibility. You can see that they disappear. I'm also going to keep geometry on reference until we do skin binding, just so that I don't move any of the actual pieces of geometry, because I want to be able to snap to them sometimes. Like for example, let's see, I don't know if I have anything actually snapped to a certain piece of geometry. But if you want to snap or get exact vertice locations, then you want to leave it on reference so that you can still snap to it, but you won't move it around or edit it, change it at all. So mirroring, we're going to mirror the joints right now. So you would think if you want to, here we'll mirror the lower body first. We're going to select the hips lower, and here's a common mistake that people first start make when they mirror. They think that oh, I'm mirroring from this point, this central line, so I need to select this joint. That's actually incorrect. You want to select the one right below in the chain that will be the first mirrored joint. So basically we're going to go into skeleton, we're going to select the left hip, we're going to go into skeleton, we're going to go to mirror joint with the option box, and we're going to say search for L underscore and replace with R underscore. And what this is going to do is it's just going to go through all the names and replace L underscore with R underscore. So our naming convention stays exact. We don't have to do everything by hand. It's just a lot faster. Alright, so mirror across. This depends on which coordinate system you're using. If you're using Y up, I think it's going to be it's going to be XY. If you're using Z up, like I am, you can tell down here we want to mirror across the YZ plane, so we're going to check that. And behavior and orientation are interesting things. Sometimes you are able to mirror across once you do IKs. Sometimes it doesn't really mirror the IK the correct way. So I always say just mirror the joints over, then do IKs on each one and make sure they're working properly. I don't ever mirror IKs. So you can leave this on behavior. And since we're going to do this with the upper body, just go ahead and hit apply. And see it mirrored it over. We want to just make sure that everything is lined up. Actually, there's an important thing that I forgot to do. So in I think the first rigging lecture, I talked about how your knee joints, your elbow joints, they need to be a little bit towards the front of the knee and back of the elbow. So that's one thing that I did not do. Also, when you're doing your joints, you need to make sure that they're lined up in the front as well as the side. So I'm going to fix the knee first. So I'm going to go into a side view, and I'm just going to unparent the ankle, Shift P, and because I don't want to move the foot when I move the knee, I'm just going to bring this forward a bit, and then I'm going to select the foot, Shift select the knee, and hit P to parent again. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the elbow and do a top view, and unparent the wrist, Shift P, move the elbow back, and select the wrist, and then select the elbow and hit P. So when you're parenting, you select child, then parent, and hit P. We're going to talk about something else called constraining, which you select the thing that's controlling first, and then basically the child. I don't like to use parent and child when I talk about constraining. I like to use another analogy like master and slave or something like that. Just because if I was talking about parents and childs with constraining and everything like that, it would get very confusing. So with that said, I'm just going to mirror the joints again. I'm just going to hit apply, make sure that everything mirrored correctly. It's looking pretty good. And I'm going to do the same thing with the shoulder. And then I'm going to go in here and just check that I'm going to assume that this mirrored correctly because the shoulder mirrored. And also I'm going to check the thighs. Yep, so those mirrored correctly. Awesome. Alright, so now I am, let's see, I might actually change the position of this central thing that we have going on here. Because you really want the joints of the thigh to be a bit lower than they are, actually like right at the knee, and then you want this right here to be right at the waist, which should be right there. So I'm going to just change those really quick. Again, see, this is good practice for unparenting and reparenting. Shift P, and I'm going to unparent this guy, and then I'm just going to grab the root joint, which is my biggest joint, and move this down in the front view so I know exactly where I'm moving it. And then I'm also going to unparent these two because I want to move this joint just down like right there, just so it's like around the waist basically. And then I'm just going to reparent everything. Make sure that you parent stuff to their appropriate joints. The hips lower was the smaller joint in the center on my model. So make sure you make sure you don't parent the legs to the hips upper, or else I mean it's gonna get really confusing when your lower body kind of controls your upper body. So oops, not mean to select the root joint. And let's see, hips upper, P, and I'm also watching the outliner to make sure that I'm parenting stuff correctly. Alright, so this covered mirroring, and I'm also going to check just to see that the layer still is working. Yep. And my joints are basically set up. This is basically all the joints that I need to have in my body. In the next section, I'm going to just put on some IKs on the leg and on the arm, and just one on the head. So stay tuned.